Gospel according to Mark. Jesus and his disciples set out for the villages of Caesarea Philippi. Along the way, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" They said in reply, "John the Baptist, others Elijah, and still others one of the prophets." But then he asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter said to him in reply, "You are the Christ." Then he warned them not to tell anyone about him. He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer greatly and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and rise again after 3 days. He spoke this openly. Then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. At this, he turned around and, looking at his disciples, rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan. You are thinking not as God does, but as human beings do." He summoned the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "Whoever wishes to come after me must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and that of the gospel will save it." The gospel of the Lord.
Today is one of the Gospels where, when I was reading and listening to some stuff about the Gospel to make sure that I'm informed and what's going, one of the commentators that I read talked about, did we get to see in this Gospel more of the human side of Jesus today? And the way he proposed that, or the way he came to it, was that he actually asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And if we look at that a little bit, I'm sure that he heard the rumors, but his disciples did all the responses. It's kind of like he was wondering, well, I wonder what effect that I'm having. You know, we all do that. When you do something nice in your home, maybe a husband did something for his wife, and they're waiting to get that little gooch, "Hey, I'm glad you did that," and you don't get it. You know, that human side that we want to be acknowledged for what we do. We want to be given credit for some of the stuff that we do. So that a little bit, if we look at that optic today for what Jesus was doing, he was trying to get his disciples to tell him what the people are saying, because as with sayings, or when people speak stuff and they don't have all the facts, Jesus then began to correct or to educate his disciples on what it meant when Peter got the answer right, that he was Christ, the Messiah. Jesus, right after that admission in the gospel, it goes into how the Lord talked about his suffering, his death, his resurrection, his giving himself up for something better, what he was called to do. And then when Peter pulls him aside to rebuke him, the Lord has to reteach Peter, because we got to remember that in this time frame, when they identified, or when the Christ or the Messiah came, it was more political, meaning that the 12 tribes of Israel would be put back into their rightful places, that the Romans would be kicked out, that they would have a whole new leadership. And then what the Lord was trying to get his disciples to get on the page, as they call it, get on the same page with him, was you need to say yes and be willing to accept suffering. You need to accept and be willing to follow and imitate what I'm doing, which is not establishing a kingdom on earth. You need to begin to work and to accept, like we heard of the suffering servant in the first reading, that the Messiah was sent to walk with the poor, to be with the downtrodden, to work with widow and orphans, to be friends of those who need it, to feed the hungry, to cure the sick. It wasn't about power and glory and exaltations one to another. And then I learned another little interesting thing that I didn't realize before. Every time we say the word Satan, we always think of the devil, the little guy with the tail and the red thing and the two horns running around with a pitchfork. In the Bible terms, when Satan is used, it doesn't mean evil. In the context, it means, what are those obstacles that keep me from building a relationship with God? What are those things that I have said yes to in my life that restrict me or keep me from, in a sense, being with the Messiah who invites me to suffer for something better? And I was reflecting on that because I know we're all still thinking about how much longer with masks. Some of us may say, why don't people get vaccinated, and what's all this stuff going on? There's this whole thing of common that we could talk about. But if we could get it down to the questions of how the Lord talked to Peter when he said, you need to be with me on the same page. How is it that we get close to God in the way that he has manifested himself? And do we remember that he became flesh? That he is the one that created and sustains us? That he is always with us from the death and resurrection of our Lord? That he resides in us because we all hold the peace of the Lord, and he resides in others. And it's always interesting to say, and I know I've spoken about this more than once, but the more I reflect on it, the more I know I have to work on it. It's when I encounter somebody that's different from me and really is getting my anger up, can I really look at them and say, close my eyes, and then when I look at them and say, when I open my eyes, I'll see the suffering Jesus in that person, and how will I respond? Or how should I respond, instead of what I want to do, how I would like to dress them down or like to put them in their place? How is it that through that one suffering, a death may occur that we may have a little bit of an argument, but a resurrection may occur because we may see each other in different light. So today, on this Sunday where the Lord tells us, ask us to invite Satan to get behind us, we first may need to start with thinking, what's my image of God in my mind? How is it the Lord close to me in ways that I may not have yet understood? But even with that, how is it that the Lord invites me to suffer, not just because suffering is good, but because when I suffer and I practice my faith as the Lord taught me, to be with the poor, the downtrodden, those that have less than I, a whole new reality breaks open, and then we can be part of the family of God.